But let's say a very good afternoon to Isabel Oakeshott, Talk TV's international editor. Isabel, how are you doing today?
Hello. Well, I am very exercised by these latest net migration projections from the Centre for Policy Studies. So we don't yet have the full figures for net annual migration, the latest batch. They don't come out for another few weeks. But analysts reckon that when those figures do come up, they may show up to 1 million figure of net migration.
It's an extraordinary number, isn't it?
It is an extraordinary number, and look, I think this is one of the biggest political betrayals of modern times. You think back to the Lib Dems when they pledged that they would abolish tuition fees and then went into coalition with the Conservatives and actually did the precise opposite of that. And they paid a dreadful, dreadful political price for that. Well, here we have the Conservatives who have repeatedly over the last 12 years promised voters that they would get control of our borders. You look back to 2010, on the 10th of January 2010, David Cameron said that he wanted to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands. Well, now we've taken back control, supposedly, of our borders by delivering Brexit, as Boris would claim. Why are we in this territory?
Well, we're in this territory because basically I believe, and I haven't said this before today, they've lied to us. I really do believe that. Because while saying with the one sort of voice, we're going to take back control of our borders, what we can say absolutely categorically is that we have lost control of the borders and it's much worse now than it's ever been.
And actually, to a great extent, it's been a deliberate policy. And I've just been looking at the skilled worker occupation shortage list, which is a list of occupations that if you do that job and you're from overseas, you can be fast-tracked to get a visa to live here. And I mean, honestly, you wouldn't believe some of the occupations that are on there. I mean, are we really claiming, as the government does, that we have a shortage of artists? I'm not making this up. I mean, any artist, web designers. I mean, maybe there is a shortage of web designers, but we also have over 5 million of our own citizens sitting around on out-of-work benefits who could absolutely train to be web designers. And on the list goes. IT people, architects, carers. I mean, not telling me that there aren't many hundreds of thousands of people in this country who are out of work who aren't entirely capable of being carers. Well,
there's 5 million people who are called so-called economically inactive. We learned today as well from a separate piece from the government that 650,000 people decided to stop working during the pandemic and have never come back to work, and that's costing the economy even more money. So they're all capable of working. And also web designers, whatever made them think they had to come and work here? You know, India, for example, has an awful lot of IT specialists, but people can work in India, guess what, on the internet. They don't have to come to Britain.
Well, precisely. If anyone knows how to work on the internet, it's presumably the web designers. The other absolute scandal here is the use and abuse of student visas. So not only does this takes place at all levels, I mean, essentially all you have to do if you want to come here for a good period of time is sign up and pay a deposit on a course. You don't actually have to do the course. No one checks that you ever actually turn up at your college. So if you're prepared to pay 500 quid or whatever, then happy days. You know, in you come and you can stay probably for as long as you like, because the other thing that the Tory manifesto of 2019 promised is that they would check who's coming in and out. But you don't actually do that. So once you're in, you're basically And furthermore, you've got the postgrad visas, which allow people to sign onto a course and then bring their dependents. Well, that's absolutely out of control. The numbers of dependents that are being brought in has quadrupled in recent years.
And we've also kind of created our own sort of population matrix, whereby many of the people who come here on small boats illegally, which is a smaller number than the legal number now, are coming here because they say they have family connections here. Now, for all we know, people are coming here on student visas, claiming that they can live here, then getting the rest of the family over on the small boats, and they can say, oh, yeah, we've got a family member who lives in Leicester. You know, it's so ridiculous. And these lefty lawyers who say, oh, the reason they come on small boats is because there's simply no other way for them to get here. Well, there's 1 million people that have come the legal route, so what's the problem?
It's an absolute nonsense, actually. I mean, nobody needs to take a small boat. Actually, it's a lot cheaper just to put down a deposit on a student course. That costs you, to say, a few £100.
Right.
No one needs to, I don't want to encourage anyone to do this, but I do want to kind of blow a hole in the argument that there's no other way to get here. You know, come here and study.
Right.
You know, that's the quickest route.
Right.
Just to correct the figures that I gave before on the dependence of postgrad students, they've actually risen tenfold, not quadrupled. They've risen tenfold in the last 4 years, so well over 100,000 additional.
It's obviously a racket. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to look into these figures, as you've just done, explain how they work, and look as though it's just being used by people and abused by people who want to come to Britain and live. So
I think we now need to decide, is Britain full, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
And of course, it's very provocative to say Britain is full. I mean, I said that on Twitter this morning, knowing we'd get a barrage of abuse, knowing that there'd be all sorts of wailing and gnashing of teeth about the fact that, I don't know, only, I'm making this up, but 3% of our land mass is actually populated. Well, you know, yes, if you want to go and live at the top of the Cairngorms, you know, there's plenty of room. But what does an overfull country look like? I mean, we already have the densest population of any country in Western Europe. An overpopulated country looks like one whose infrastructure has not kept up with the pace of population growth. So fine, you know, if we're going to add, we decide collectively as a country that we want to add another 10 million people, I'm sure we can find places for them to live, particularly in remote parts of Scotland, but you've got to have the infrastructure to keep up. I mean schools, I mean roads, I mean trains that actually run, I mean an NHS, and I mean schools that actually teach children well enough so that they don't end up claiming out of work benefits and can actually do some of these skilled workers jobs.
But we had a call this morning, Isabel, from a guy called Dan, who said that he goes around sort of fixing up houses. I think he does double glazing for them, and he was working on behalf of a landlord, 2 foreign families, one from Lithuania who had 4 kids, another from, I think it was Somalia, who had 6 kids. That's 10 children who are presumably being catered for in the school system, and it's no wonder that the schools are all getting full.
Absolutely, and the same goes for the NHS. I mean, this is just, I really find it hard to grasp why people don't understand this.
Right.
In the end, unless you expand the infrastructure, then the two things don't match up. And those people who've been living here, are born here, and have paid into the tax system all their lives, are continuing to work hard in low-paid jobs whilst being hammered for up to half of what they earn to pay more tax for failing services, are rightly absolutely furious that they are not seeing any real benefit for the money that they're giving the exchequer.
Well, that's right, and people are starting to say it's all very well saying people are coming here to make their lives better, but if they're making the lives of people who are already here worse, then that's not a fair exchange, is it?
Absolutely not. And, you know, Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives are lucky that at the moment many voters, they don't quite, who are frustrated, they're exasperated by this, don't quite know where to turn. But there's a year left before the general election, and I think this is going to be one of the biggest issues. How can anyone trust the Conservative Party to deliver on this? And by the way, we know that the Labour Party wouldn't be any better because they continue to have senior figures claiming that there aren't enough people in this country to do the jobs that we need done and that we need to import more people. Plenty of people in the Labour Party at highest levels still want pretty much the open borders situation we've got.
Oh, I know. It's absolutely horrendous. And I don't see any end to it. I don't see any way that they're going to stop the small boats coming, which, again, is a minor sort of irritant, if you like, in terms of it's only 100,000 as opposed to 1 million. But it's just unsustainable. It's ridiculous.
It is, and people will want to feel what can they do about it, and that I think is the space over the next year that is the big political opportunity for parties like Reform. And just to stress, I'm not a member of Reform or any political party. But any party that has a hard line on immigration and actually means it and is going to deliver it, I think can do very well. Whether there are other parties that will also get in on that act remains to be seen, but I'm not terribly optimistic.
No, sadly not. No, apparently it's very un-British to want to stop people coming here illegally or legally so that we can have completely full-up country, full-up cities, full-up schools, full-up hospitals. Unbelievable.